so you can
Thanks.
do that in the background, not a problem.
Thank you.
Right. Good morning, Chair. I can confirm that we are now live streaming.
Thank you, Tom, and good morning, everybody, and welcome to our July public board meeting. Today's meeting, we just particularly wanted to welcome Ellen Rule. It's Ellen's first public board meeting with the ICB, having joined the Health and Care Trust as Chief Executive. So a warm welcome to Ellen, and fortuitously, we have a big focus on mental health today, so it really is a big welcome to Ellen, because we've got mental health very highly on the agenda. I just wanted to welcome also Jade Brooks. Jade's going to be leading one of our items today as Director of Operations and Delivery. We have had Jade at our board before, but good to see you again, Jade. Thank you for joining us. And also Francis Martin, who is from Wye Valley and deputising for Russell Hardy today. We do have some apologies also from Mark Yates, who's the usual participant at this meeting. And I also want to particularly welcome Health Watch colleagues Simon Adams and Christine Price. Make a start to by first of all noting apologies for absence. We do have a number of apologies for this meeting. I think it probably recognises this is sort of holiday season, but just for noting, apologies from Rachel Hardy, Amanjal Nobbs, Paul Walker, Jane Ives, Stephen Coleman, Will Taylor and Roy Williams. But we are quorate today, so we can proceed with our business. Declarations of interest, as we have a log available, obviously, but just want to double check. Are there any specific declarations in relation to items on the agenda today? I'll take that as no, but obviously if anything emerges during the meeting, we can note that. We do have a governance log available. I don't think there are any actions outstanding, Hannah. We've refreshed the decisions log because obviously we're into a new financial year, but the last year's decisions are available for viewing in the log, which is on our website. Moving on then to minutes of the previous meeting held on the 21st of May. Actually, it's not the first meeting of the financial year. I've kind of omitted the fact we've already had one in May, but obviously didn't make any decisions at that meeting. So minutes of the previous meeting, colleagues have already seen that. Just wanted to check that you're happy to approve that formally. Okay, we'll take that as approved. So very pleased then to move on to our patient and public voice section. I'm actually pleased to say we have had a question today from a member of the public. So I'm going to take the opportunity to read that out on behalf of that member of the public, Bethany Hemmings. And her question is, the adult ADHD services have been stopped by Herefordshire and Worcestershire Health and Care Trust and taken over by the ICB. How do you think this will impact adults awaiting potential ADHD diagnosis? When will the assessment start again? And I believe Mary Gay is going to respond. Mary, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So yeah, just some context first. So obviously ADHD assessments, we've talked from many of these boards about the children's ADHD assessments, but adults is a significant national challenge as well. And indeed, the National Task Force have produced an interim report last month outlining the size of the challenge for us. But our position, so last summer in autumn, both of our placed providers, so Health and Care Trust at Worcestershire and the Black Country were actually providing it in Herefordshire for us, the NHS Trust. They both ceased to provide those services for new adult ADHD assessments, largely due to inability from workforce to provide those services. But since then, we have people can access an assessment through the NHS Right to Choose scheme, which is accessed via the GP. Patients are advised to choose an accredited provider due to the quality concerns that may be evident in non-accredited providers. We currently have one accredited provider, but we are almost finalising the process for 4 of those providers in our area. And we have from this month commissioned Virtus Health and Taurus Health to provide ongoing medication reviews, so that is starting as well. This is a challenge, and the waiting times can be considerable, but we're now starting to put some services in for these patients, and we can see through our right to choose number, those numbers are going up considerably in both adults and children. So it's something we will monitor through the QRD to make sure that access and quality is sufficient, and we wait for the national steer on how to manage ADHD patients in future.
Thank you very much, Mary, and I hope that gives Bethany some assurance that there are actions in hand to address further expansion of provision. And clearly it's an area we will come back to, because we know services for members of our community who may have neurodivergence has been an area of challenge and has been a regular part of our discussions in public. So, and no doubt we'll come to that again through the course of the meeting. So thank you very much to Bethany for the question. So our next item in this part is a patient story, and in respect of our sort of approach of spotlighting a particular topic, we are focusing our spotlight today is on mental health, and delighted that Ellen in her first meeting is going to take us through that patient story. So over to you, Ellen, please.
Thank you, Krishni. So I think you have a video, is that right? Should be teed up. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear. I'm not aware we've got a video, Ellen.
Okay, I was advised that a video had been sent over. Can you just give me, is it possible for you just to give me 2 minutes just to very quickly check that and just come back?
Well, perhaps what we could do is continue with the Chief Executive Officer report.
Yeah.
And when we can come back to, as we're taking the mental health items on the updates, which is the Community Mental Health Services Review and Spotlight Mental Health Services, we could perhaps come back to the patient story as part of that. So we do those in sequence. Yeah. Let's do that. So let's move on then to our Simon's report as CEO of the ICB. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you, Krishni. Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody. So hopefully people have had a chance to read the report, and thank you to colleagues for their input in pulling it together, particularly as I was on leave for the last couple of weeks and so not around to submit the paper in the deadline last week. So thank you particularly to Hannah for doing that. So you'll see from the report, firstly, there are some mandatory approvals that the board are asked to make as part of the emergency planning framework. That's the business part of the report. The rest of the report is designed, as usual, to give the board an overview of the big developments in the system, both in terms of some of the service performance headlines, but also the policy developments and the strategy developments. And as we have talked about a few times this year, we are in a bit of a phase in the NHS of quite a bit of movement around policy, particularly as the new government has now celebrated their anniversary of forming a government, and things like the 10-year plan have emerged and we're starting to understand. So the report provides a bit of an overview of the 10-year plan, some headlines, but we will be spending a lot more time on that, I'm sure, in our development sessions next month and in future board meetings, just as we start to piece together the system's response to the 10-year plan and how we will reshape, refocus some of our efforts to incorporate some of the new agendas that have been introduced. Secondly, of course, there's a big focus on the ICB reset, the changes to how integrated care boards work, the changes to our role, some quite subtle, some subtle, some more significant changes to our role, and specifically the significant reduction in running costs that we're required to achieve during the course of this year. As we talked about in the last 2 meetings, our proposal to do that has been to form a clustered management arrangement with Coventry and Worcestershire ICB. So we're not merging the ICBs, we're going to have a set of management that sits behind both organisations and provides the services and the functions for both organisations to fulfil their statutory responsibilities. So the good news, as outlined in the report, is that clustering proposal has now been approved by NHS England and the Department of Health, and we are now proceeding with some of the more practical steps to put those arrangements in place. And the report on page 3 lists some of those, specifically, certainly for me and Christian, most relevantly, the appointment of a single chair for the cluster and a single chief executive, which is ongoing at the moment and will I think is scheduled to reach a conclusion at some point this month, but dependent on various approvals. The bottom of page 3 gives you some performance headlines. I'm not going to go into these in huge detail. These are covered in more detail at the QRD committee. All of the service performance issues are covered there, and there is a report on the agenda that goes into more detail. I think the headline I would draw out, and we have touched on this before, continued good progress in long waiters and elective care, which is a big priority of the government, a big priority of the Prime Minister, actually. And you can see from the numbers that 50% reduction over the last 12 months in people that have had to wait over a year. So, of course, waiting a year is still far too long, and we're trying the next milestone, really ambitiously, we're trying to aim for is to get much closer towards that 18-week standard we had before the pandemic. But actually, when you see the scale of progress that the trusts have been able to make over the last 12 months, I do think that is something to be acknowledged and celebrated, and we need to use that momentum to take into achieving the next milestones. Couple more things, Christian, if I may. So just to take you to page 9, which does list the emergency planning, resilience and response requirements that the board is asked to do. I think that's fairly standard. I don't think there are any issues with any of that information that's being proposed. So my recommendation is the board is happy to approve that. And just to finish, at the back of the report, you'll see a section on artificial intelligence. So this is something I am really excited about. This is something we were pursuing way before the 10-year plan and way before the ICB reset. This is how do we properly integrate the use of artificial intelligence into some of our operations, both as the ICB, and you'll see specifically it relates to some of the continuing healthcare, but actually when you talk about the ambient scribe artificial intelligence and the potential for the use of that in a lot of clinical consultations and the note taking and the use of the algorithms, it's really, really exciting for the NHS. We've got to do that properly. It's got to be done in a safe, tested environment. We've got to do it with patience. I'm sure Simon and Christine would remind us. But actually, this has the potential to be really, really revolutionary in terms of how we deliver it. And when we come to, from an ICB perspective, when we come to trying to reduce some of our staffing costs in continuing healthcare, which is, of course, a big part of the big reduction we're going to have to deliver, one of the most important ways of doing this will be embracing some of this technology. So actually the work that Katie and some of the team have done, and Kath and some of the team have done leading up to this, will be really important in helping to deliver the next phase of this. So just to bring that to the board's attention. Very happy to, Christian, to take any questions on any of that or anything else that's not I haven't covered.
Thanks, Simon. So over to colleagues for questions. So Vicky, please.
Thank you, Krishna. Simon, I'm just interested in, obviously with the 10-year plan, the constraints on the digital strategy have been the resources to be able to implement some of these issues. And it is exciting, but obviously requires some resource to support that as well. Is there any indication from the 10-year plan that we will have a resource that follows to support those innovations?
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. It's a really good question. You know, you've been around this for quite some years. I mean, we have had since the last board meeting the comprehensive spending review outcome, which Mark will now build into a a medium and longer term financial plan. I think planning is going to change this year. We're going to be asked to have a slightly longer outlook. And I think by the very nature of that, that does help the resourcing of some of the things you're talking about, because when you're looking 12 months ahead, it's very hard to identify cost and a return in terms of a business case. But when you're able to look 3 to 5 years ahead, you can look over a longer time frame, and it gives more ability for some of the paybacks to be factored into the planning. So I think that's probably the most important bit, the slightly longer time frame. I think the second bit is, and I think Mark mentions in his report, reading it yesterday, we've got to get a bit more information about the capital planning and programmes. So those developments you talk about will be funded by a combination of capital upfront investment and a different shape of revenue. The revenue is a bit clearer because of the CSR outcome. The capital, I think, we're still awaiting a bit more information. But yeah, Mark, I don't know whether you wanted to come in about the timeline to understand a bit more about the capital plan.
Absolutely, thank you, Simon. So absolutely, we know the comprehensive spending review in terms of the numbers there that have been allocated to the NHS. What we're going to have then is a requirement to produce 5-year plans across all partners and across the ICB as well. To support that, we were given 3-year firm revenue allocations. So we'll know what our allocation is for 3 years. We'll be given a 2-year then set of planning assumptions to get to the 5 years. Within that as well, we'll have 4 years worth of fixed capital allocations as well. So again, we can look at over a longer time frame, as Simon's just described, thinking about some of the requirements of the 10-year plan, how we look to move towards more digital, to neighbourhood health, and we're going to have to work through that. So the timeline for that is we will get these allocations probably just at the beginning of the autumn, so end of September, that kind of time frame is what's being talked about at the moment. The requirement then to have a 5-year financial plan completed by the end of December, so that then there's a 3-month leading period to a new financial year to ensure it's embedded, and we can work on a longer term basis.
Brilliant, that's really helpful both, thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. David, please.
Thanks, Krishni. That was very good news, actually, just hearing about the longer term financial planning. So thanks for that. Yeah, I had 2 questions. One is a kind of question which I think a member of the public would be likely to ask, which is, and Simon and Mark, you've already kind of to some extent covered it, but not entirely. So given our own plans with building a sustainable future and our own joint forward plan, do we currently see any conflict between what we've been currently planning to do and the NHSE 10-year plan? And if so, are those conflicts easily managed? And the second one is that as we talk, it's almost a question on behalf of staff, that as we talk about clustering, can we be sure that there will be a kind of fair and equal process applied to both ICBs as we begin to bring those together?
Yeah, thanks, David. 2 really, really good questions. I mean, firstly, I think there's a direction of travel that we've been aware of for probably at least 12 months. So a year ago, when the government was formed, the 3 shifts that formed the basis of the 10-year plan were very apparent, and actually all of our building a sustainable future work has all been based on those 3 shifts. I think what the 10-year plan brings is a bit more detail, specifically about the neighbourhood health development, which is a big part of building a sustainable future. It's one of our programmes, but actually there's a bit more detail now in the 10-year plan. I think the other moving part in the 10-year plan has been around some of the architecture, and of course we're a big part of that. So the role the ICB is going to play, the opportunities that exist for providers in particular, but also the increased accountability and responsibility that will sit back with provider boards. So I think we will need to adapt our strategic work, but it's tinkering and tweaking rather than resetting. So I'm very confident we're in the right place in terms of the direction we've been heading, and actually it reinforces in many ways the work that's been done to date as being the right type of work and the right type of change and transformation to give us that sustainability. And secondly, yeah, very simply, yes, it's really important from a people management point of view that this is fair and equitable for all of us, me and Krishni included. That will be our full intention. It's complicated. It's going to be a really difficult OD and culture challenge, I think. One of the things that's apparent to me over the 6 weeks or so we've been doing some more detailed work with partners in Coventry and Warwickshire. Yeah, they're different, aren't they? Organisations are different, the cultures are different, the leadership styles are different, the structures are different. So one of the challenge for the new leadership will be to reflect a bit on that and to come up with the right kind of third way that's a combination of the best of both cultures of the organisations to lead that forward. But absolutely that has to be done. You know, we have responsibilities under employment law to people, but also we've got moral responsibilities. We've got certainly our people here that we're talking about today. We've got a really strong culture. We've had fantastic staff survey results. The people on the call and in the team have worked really hard to build that culture and mindset and ethos, and we'll want to kind of honour that, won't we, through this process and treat people as fairly and reasonably as we possibly can. So absolutely full commitment from my perspective to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Katie, did you want to add anything to that at all?
No, I would second what Simon said. I think that's probably covered it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Sarah, please.
Thanks. It was just picking up on the AI and the digital that's in the paper. So a comment and then a quick question. So my comment would be just to as a non-exec to give assurance from the things that I've seen about health inequalities and digital inclusion in that. So I know that through our programme boards, through the Health Inequalities Board, I am actually seeing a real awareness of digital poverty and people struggling with access and the things that we're going to do and are doing through local authority, communities and the ICB to mitigate against that. So I think just as in a public meeting to say as a non-exec, I am seeing assurance of that. And my question was really how, again, looking for assurance that whilst we're pushing forwards with artificial intelligence and all the benefits that that can have, we are actually cognizant that we've got our green plan and that actually AI uses a lot of energy and isn't carbon neutral, so that we are actually trying to weigh up those two commitments that we've got. I know that's a bit of a conundrum for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I have a long debate with my daughter about, she tells me about all the energy that ChatGPT uses to run its servers and keep it all cool, and how it's really important that it's not overused. So I'm very conscious of what you are describing, Sarah. I think, look, this is about doing the right thing for patients, isn't it? And of course, part of doing the right thing for patients is playing our role in that wider sustainability and green agenda. We know, don't we, and some of the things in the 10-year plan, particularly about how outpatient appointments are managed and avoiding the need for patients to travel. We did some work, didn't we, David, a while ago about the number of journeys that we thought we could avoid by doing that differently, and it was literally millions over the course of a planning period. So there is a hugely positive contribution that we can make to the green agenda as a health system. We are a huge part of our local society, actually, aren't we, in our system and the way all that works. But yeah, it's a good reminder that the answer isn't always technology and churning through things. There's a balance here, isn't there, Sarah? So yeah, good point, well made. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Really helpful. Thank you very much. Frances, please.
Thanks, everyone. Not wanting to prolong the discussion, but just some feedback from our board. We had a demonstration on ambient AI. Two of our consultants came and did a mock consultation to the board, which was fascinating, and we saw then the output. But I think one of the things, particularly to reassure the public, the feedback that we've had, and obviously every consultation where we're using ambient AI, we ask for informed consent beforehand, but the feedback is an enormous benefit whereby the clinicians are maintaining eye contact and looking at the patient, not looking at their screen and typing while they're having the consultation. So it isn't just a way for us to be more efficient with our resources, the quality impact I think is significant for people.
Yeah, thanks, Francis. And that's a good opportunity to bring in the ambient AI and being able to record the consultation and use algorithms to sort information and allow the patient to have more face-to-face contact time with the clinician or the professional doing the assessment. That's a really important part of this. But there's a hugely important part of it is about the access, therefore, the patients and families have to information that's held within about them. So the CHC work, ambient AI is part of it, but as is a portal where patients can see where their case has got to in its assessment, and that accessibility from a patient perspective is also something that's pretty groundbreaking, really, that we are opening up this process to make it ever more transparent, and that's a good thing. But you're right, we do this with people. There's a co-production element to how this develops, a huge co-production element, and we'll want to keep a focus on that, Francis, so thank you.
Yeah, and if I could just add one more thing, Christy, just in one of the things that we've struggled with is the delay between outpatient or inpatient consultations, and so discharge summaries and communicating back to general practice and other members of the primary care team and community services, that can happen in seconds now. So we, in terms of joined up care, and we'll be talking later about neighbourhood health, and one of the big impacts is about shared data, and that can happen in real time rather than with a delay waiting for somebody to type up a consultation. So we believe the benefits are enormous and are going full steam ahead.
Thanks, Francis. That was whilst both of you were engaging on the topic of the benefit for patients. I was thinking about that element as well, that the speed with which these things will then be available, it must be better for patients as well, because it can otherwise it can be can be various degrees of delay, can't it, built into the process waiting for the output. So really important points, and great to hear that you had that demonstration in your public board. It was good to have these opportunities for boards, I think, to engage directly in the topic. Ellen, please.
Thanks, Krishni. I just wanted to share a really brief example to build on that. So we've been doing a pilot in memory assessment service. I don't know how familiar people are with that, but typically you'd be spending an hour to an hour and a half with the patient and their family, and the clinician will be spending approximately an hour writing all of that up afterwards. So to remove that hour is a huge productivity gain, but would also echo the point that Francis made about the quality aspect for the patients as well, when you're not having to take notes at the same time. So I think particularly in some of our mental health services where we have really quite in-depth and long assessments, the opportunity by the kind of ambient tech, I think, is really significant. We're just scratching the surface of that at the moment.
Great, thank you, Ellen. Simon Adams.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, Simon, thank you for your report. And I just wanted to ask a question about the use of ambient AI. I mean, there's nothing new really in recording a conversation and then using software to reproduce a draft of that conversation. I think what's going to be important for the patient is knowing exactly what is being recorded and what is going into AI. So I presume that NHS England presumably will produce some sort of standard operating procedures that will be shared with patients. Because it's one thing to have what you think might be a confidential conversation with a clinician. It's another thing to give consent to maybe that confidential conversation actually being recorded.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah. And can I just say, by example, Krishni, my GP already uses it. These notes are automatically recorded, and he records his notes, but he tells you what he's recording. And then you know what's going into your notes.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. And actually, I recall a discussion in an informal board session where we talked about some of our general practice colleagues already using ambient AI, and actually the information governance aspects were the things, data security, etc., were things that we talked about very quickly. But I'll bring Katie in because I know this is an area of focus, and it was the sort of immediate risk that we recognise we would need to manage. Yeah. So, Katie.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. You gave me the right in for me to be able to say this, because as I was listening to the conversation, I did want to reassure people that the data safety and the clinical safety around the information that's being recorded and used is really, really crucial. And there's lots and lots of conversations going on with NHSE around this. They have recently released some more guidance around the use of ambient AI, because lots of organisations are starting to use it much more. And they're very clear that it has to go through quite rigorous testing and processes to make sure that it's using the data correctly, that the systems aren't hallucinating, as we say about AI, and that we need to go through the right processes when we're talking to patients to show them how it's being used and get their consent to use it. So lots of patient engagement going on around this, and lots of information governance work going on around this as well. So while we recognise it's got huge potential for productivity gains, we also realise that people's data is really sacrosanct and we need to look after it. So we're going through the right processes to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Krishni, can I just mention another very quickly another dimension? And this is just an overall thing about, and you've already talked about productivity and streamlining, but we are currently seeing examples and getting feedback examples of where the private sector who deliver NHS services are really streamlining some of their diagnostic testings, some of their, tests. You get tested, your hearing tested, and a hearing aid given to you in exactly the same appointment, where you had your first consultation. So there's going to be some real challenges for the NHS if they don't grasp some of this opportunity.
Thank you, Simon. I think
bit of a statement, really, Krishni, rather than a bit of an observation.
Yeah, and actually, I'm sure, Katie, we've got actually more of a digital focus coming as our next item. So perhaps Katie can comment further on that, because I think these are all the opportunities. And actually, when I've been to conferences where use of technology generally, whether it's AI, ambient AI, or other technologies, I think there's been a recognition there's a huge amount that can be done differently, and therefore, but I think the investment point that we started with Vicky raised a question about, how do we invest the resources that we need to do this properly, and also I think there's always been a question about how much should the NHS centrally do and how much should we do locally, because if we're all trying to do these testing locally, then that's an additional cost for us. So these are some of the discussions I think we've had, but I think we can come back round to perhaps more of a conversation in a moment when we move on to Katie's update. If there are no further questions on Simon's report, Simon, there was just a couple of things I wanted to just pick up. Could you say a little bit more about, I thought it was really, the update in relation to building the sustainable future is really helpful, because we're talking a lot about it, and there's some really clear elements there about the things that are forming that programme. Under frailty in particular, the development of the framework around accountability, risk and incentives. I was just interested if you could say a little bit more about that, because I think we've probably not, I think we've talked a little bit about benefits realisation at the board, but I'm not sure we've talked in any great detail about that. So I wondered if you could say a bit more, and then we'll come on to just talking about the EPR.
Yeah, I mean, that bit is going to be a key part of the 10-year plan, neighbourhood health stuff. So just working out, we talk about the acute to community shift, but working out the risks and incentives that sit around that is going to be really, really critical. The bit in the report refers to some work in Herefordshire. So there's a particular arrangement that Nigel's team and Jane's team have worked together, whereby if the additional interventions offered by the primary care teams does have an impact on reduced admissions, reduced length of stay, there is a financial element then, incentive to drive some of that. It'd be really interesting to see how that works. That's something that the two providers are working through. I suspect when we come to developing our proper frameworks for neighbourhood health, there'll need to be kind of strategic commissioning, financial incentives that sit around that as well. And that'll be a big part of what we're working through. But that work in Herefordshire gives us a useful pilot and case study as to how how we could apply that in a future strategic commissioning framework.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Simon. And that's why I think it felt particularly relevant in the context of the model ICB, that these are the sort of, it's the expectation that there'll be smart mechanisms for encouraging, pulling the right levers, really, which in terms of changing the dynamic around, hospital to community, etc. So it was good to see a reference to that and hear about the potential for further development. I did want to just note the change to the ICB constitution, which Simon's report mentions. I don't think, Hannah, we have to actually approve it because it's an NHS England direction to us to change the constitution. But it's important to note that that change has occurred and it's there in our website version of the constitution. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. And then the final piece is the EPRR, Emergency Preparedness, Resilience and Response. I think I've learnt that the acronym, what the acronym is clearly. It's quite a mouthful, but it is a very important set of documents that we as a board, I think, are asked to approve on this occasion. There have, as I understand it, been through some scrutiny already through operational exec, so it is really here as a recommendation that we formally approve it. But I just wanted to double check with Simon and Hannah. We also have a self-assessment and submission process that I think is sort of going on in the background as well. And this is, I believe, an element relating to that. And will we have something further around that coming back to board? Because I wasn't sure whether this was just the start of it. Hannah, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Krishna. So yeah, indeed. So it's called core standards, EPRR core standards, and the submission is always at the end of August each year. So it's sort of a slightly different business year. So the approval of these policies by the board itself is a core component of those core standards. So that's something that has to come through board for visibility. And essentially, it's just a set of standards and assessments that we need to go through. We will know where we kind of come out of that process sometime in September. So I think normally by the end of, by September or November board, we would bring kind of the outcome here. I think we're predicting significant assurance or, full compliance. I think that was kind of where we were last year. So we are hoping to maintain that this year, but we will obviously keep the board informed.
Thank you, Hannah. So really helpful to receive that update as well. So if the board is content, we are asked to note the content of the rest of the report that Simon has provided and approve specifically the EPRR elements, policy elements which are included. So are we all happy to do that? Thank you very much. So Simon, thank you for the report. Always interesting because it covers a range of different things. And obviously there is an opportunity in some of these areas for us to go into a little bit more detail because of other items on the agenda. So we will now move on to the digital and data programme update from Katie, which actually builds very helpfully on the conversation we've had already as part of Simon's report. So over to you, Katie, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've only got a few minutes to go through this, and this really is an update, so I'm going to assume that you've got all of the detail from the paper, but I'll just pull out a few of the headlines, if I may. So it's 6 months since we agreed the DDAT strategy for the ICS, and I want to just let you know what's been going on since then, hence the content of the paper. So I think it's fair to say that digital and data has taken on even greater importance over the past few months. We obviously have seen it through the 10-year plan. The analog to digital shift that Simon's talked about has been around for a while, but the plan builds out the detail, and we've got in the report what the headlines of that detail are in essence. And that's very much aligned to what we had in the DDAT strategy, which isn't a surprise because we did know that this shift was coming and we had a feeling that most of those things would be in there. What I would say is the AI piece has absolutely rocketed since the last time we spoke about this. If you recall, we were very focused on the patient portal, on shared care record, and to start to look into AI and use AI and pilot it where we can. I would say that the 10-year plan really ramps up what we need to do around AI, and alongside that, all of the clinical safety elements that we've just been talking about. And data takes on even more importance, having a consistent set of patient records that move around the system with the patient, and that we can use both for direct care with clinicians and for population health management comes through hugely in that plan. What we've done then is give you an update against the strands we've been working on. So we've given you some detail on the shared care record. We've done a review of that to see how much it's being used, and we're seeing quite a lot of increase actually in the usage, but we know there are some more areas to go at. So we're pulling together a development plan for that. Some of the items are shown in the report, but there will be more to come. And we were also doing a big change piece around the shared care record. So a bit of education, a bit of checking that the data that it's pulling through is the right data, try getting out to clinicians to find out how they're using it, and seeing if there are better ways of us pulling data through so that we can remove the need for people to have to go into separate systems to find bits of information. There's always a cost associated with that in licenses as well. The patient portal is the other thing really to pull out. We got a lot further in the last few months in terms of the development of that, and both Wye Valley and Worcester Acute starting to put quite a lot of their outpatient appointments and letters there onto that system. The patient portal in essence is somewhere that patients can go to get their own letters and bookings and test results, etc. And by putting them on there, we remove the need to send out lots of letters, to slow down the processes and to move more quickly. We are going to have to go back out to the market though and look at a new patient portal provider. The viability of our existing portal is probably not going to work beyond the end of this financial year. So we're working with DDAT directors to work out what that looks like next. AI we've covered off, so I'll take any questions if anybody has them as we go. And then there's a bit more on cybersecurity, which work continues. We work together to keep ourselves safe, and then the BI and analytics work is ongoing to try and move us into more of a population health management focused world. The other thing in that paper is around the digital maturity assessment. So this is a nationally run survey that happens every year. It looks at all of the providers and the ICB, so the ICS as a whole, and looks at how mature our digital systems, processes, and kind of the people element of our digital world are. So do we have the right leadership, the right strategy? Do we have the right systems? Do we have the things that the national team expect of us? Are we working with our teams to understand how to use those things? Are we thinking about health inequalities in our digital strategy and digital inclusion? So we get an assessment. We've given you the provisional scores of that assessment for this year. They were completed. The final submission went in on the 13th of June. We're awaiting our final results, but you've got the provisional there, so they are subject to change, but generally we don't think they'll move too much. I suppose what I'd pull out of that is we were slightly below average last year. We are in the middle of the pack now, having made some moves on some of the things in the report above this section. Obviously, average is not where we want to be. We want to go further, but the upwards trajectory is reassuring. And then the final thing I'd say is the DDAT in the blueprint and how we're going to manage digital data analytics and technology going forwards is interesting. The model blueprint for the ICB talks about the provision of digital tools being given out to providers rather than being done at an ICB level. We have a mixed economy at the moment. Some of that's done locally with providers, some of it's done by us in the ICB. So we need to work through those things. And then the strategic leadership of digital is expected to move to the region, and we're working with regional colleagues to understand what that looks like. So while there is a big focus on digital over the coming years, understanding who's going to deliver which parts of it is still very much to be worked through, and that's the work that's ongoing, both as part of the design for the future ICB, but more broadly across the whole of the NHS infrastructure. As we get some clarity on that, and start to get some clarity on how the funding is going to come through, both as Mark's outlined, but from the national teams as well, we'll be able to work out who's carrying on with which bits. So my aim at the moment is to keep it safe, keep it moving, keep focused on the things that are in the 10-year plan and that come out of the DMA while we're working through the design of that and talking to colleagues. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Katie. Good to just have that update and build on, as I say, the conversations we had slightly earlier. But any questions or further comments regarding Katie's paper? Sarah, please.
I think just a really quick comment, really, Katie, to thank you for the work that you've done. I know some of this has been seen as really sort of national exemplar work, so thank you. But also just as a clinician to comment that for years the sort of the golden thread or the magic sort of thing has been, wow, a set of patient notes that go from one provider to another, where people can see who's done what. People don't have to retell their story, especially for all of us, but in the space of the mental health world that we'll be looking at later. So just really important to, whilst we've got all the exciting new technologies, not to forget that old chestnut which you mentioned of the records that. And I think it sounds as if we're moving in the right direction. So thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Absolutely right to highlight that. If there was one thing that has always stayed with me, it's what patients have said, which is they don't want to keep retelling their story to every clinician, and therefore it's why we shared care record was top of our list, actually, wasn't it, Katie, in our discussion that we did focus on that. I mean, it's probably not something you can particularly comment on, Katie, at this stage, but clearly when I was looking at the digital maturity assessment scores, we do score less well on the healthy populations, and that's the area that whatever happens, we're going to need to be good at in terms of model, the model ICB, the future ICB. So our focus really on developing ourselves in that space feels really, really important, which I know you've pulled out already, but the future does require that, doesn't it? And I suppose the one thing these provisional scorings do enable is the opportunity then to see what is it that Black Country, Northants and Notts do that have got them to where they are. And actually, I think it's fair to say that David Mahaffey and I certainly were in a session with Notts where they talked us through the work they'd done, which was quite had moved on quite significantly, I think, compared to other places. I'm less familiar with Black Country, and I probably should be more familiar with Northants than I am. But so it's the opportunity, I think, to benchmark with others and see whether we can not reinvent the wheel. Really, do you want to make a final comment on that?
Yes, thank you. So some of that slightly lower score does come from us not having had all of our data in the same place. So the infrastructure hasn't been in place to move some of our primary care data together with our secondary care data. We are piloting a tool that lifts that from primary care, puts it all in the same place and enables us to bring all that data together and then use it for population health management. And at the same time, we've set up a population health management steering group that brings together colleagues from across the system and also from the councils in public health to talk through what it means to use that data in a meaningful way to cohort patients. So I feel like all of the foundations are in place. We've just been a little bit behind, and that is what will speed up a bit more over the coming months.
Great, that's super. Thank you, Katie. So I think we have provided feedback really on the paper as requested, and I think there's broad endorsement for the progress and the direction of travel as we talked about earlier. So thank you, Katie. I would just echo Sarah's comments around your leadership of this agenda, having taken it on. Is it just over a year ago now? I'm not quite sure, but thank you for taking it forward, and always good to hear an update. So We are moving on then from that and go back to our patient story and then the 2 items relating to mental health services. So, Ellen, are you
Yes.
good to go? Over to you.
Yes, good to go. And apologies, Krishni. I think just turned out there was some crossed wires. So I was poised expecting a video to run, and I think we decided from a tech point of view it might not work very well.
Okay. I think we've got a little difficult connection there. That's unfortunate. Ellen was just about to roll on. Can you hear us, Ellen? Okay. So
I'm going to.
Ellen, we didn't.
Can you hear me now, Krishni?
Yeah, we lost you unfortunately for a few minutes, but we got as far as here.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. And
okay.
If you want to go ahead, then.
I will. Apologies, things seem to be not working very well today, so hopefully we'll make it through the story in full. So I'm going to tell Colin's story. I will, as I mentioned, and hopefully you heard, circulate the video as well for members to see. So this is Colin's story in his words. So he says, I first had contact with mental health services in 2003 when I was in prison for robbery. I was then detained under Section 2 of the Mental Health Act, followed by Section 3 of the Mental Health Act, and diagnosed with schizophrenia. On release, I was seen by the Bromsgrove Community Mental Health Team and put on a depot, but I know I struggled to engage with them and was heavily reliant on drugs. I was still at home with my mum and stepdad and had lots of not very positive influences around me. Unfortunately, in 2010, I stabbed my stepdad. I am deeply ashamed of this, but I know I wasn't well and I was experiencing paranoia. When this happened, I was remanded again, but due to my illness, I was diverted under Section 4849 of the Mental Health Act to Reeside. I spent 4 years at Reeside Medium Secure Clinic, and it was here that they started me on clozapine. In April 2014, I was stepped down to a low secure locked rehab unit, Abbey House, where I was supported to move into an independent flat in the December of 2014 within the grounds. I was conditionally discharged in May 2015 with many conditions attached, and I was excluded from contact with my stepfather and certain areas. Part of the move from Abbey House was a gradual transition to Phoenix House supported living in the community, and it was here that I moved to Kidderminster and made the friends that I still have today. The team at the Robertson Centre, the Wyre Forest neighbourhood mental health team, have supported me to do some of the things that I can do today, as well as all the staff at Phoenix House. I was supported not to go back on drugs, and I was, because of this, I managed to do driving lessons, passed, and now have my own car. They worked together to support my wish to move to my own independent flat in the community. In 2021, with support from employment support services within the neighbourhood mental health team and encouragement from the staff at Phoenix House, I applied for an apprenticeship to do my MBQ in health and social care with Home Group and got this working at Clarendon House. This, however, was in part of the exclusion zone. Again, the staff at the Robertson Centre helped and supported me so that this was taken off my conditions, and I have been increasing my contacts with my mum as well as phone contact with my stepdad. The Ministry of Justice agreed to take the exclusion zones and no contact with my stepdad off my conditions. Unfortunately, in April 2022, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer and secondaries in my lung and stomach. I had an operation and immediately started on chemotherapy. Because of the treatment, my bloods were affected, and the company that oversees clozapine wanted to stop it. I know that my mental health practitioner fought hard and worked with the pharmacy team, oncology, and my psychiatrist to support the continuation of my clozapine alongside my cancer treatment. My mental health practitioner listened to me when I told her how scared I was to come off clozapine and how unwell I knew I would become if I came off it, and probably would have then refused my cancer treatment. I had a lot of input at this time, as the team at the Robertson Centre had to see me almost daily to take my daily OBS as well as more regular bloods. They worked with the clozapine company as they needed to know I was being seen and that any concerns could be actioned quickly. My relationship with my stepdad really improved in this time, and he supported me with taking me to a lot of appointments as I couldn't drive. I stayed on my clozapine and remained mentally well. I went to all my cancer appointments and I remain cancer-free today. My mental health practitioner also advocated at the time to keep my apprenticeship and supported to get my base transferred nearer to home. My recovery from cancer was not easy, but I knew that I also still wanted to work. Home Group were great and supported a move to work at Phoenix House, where I had once lived. I have continued to work with the residents there and work towards my MVQ. I have completed the modules and I have an exam I'm revising for. I also had a recent presentation to do, and although I was nervous, I felt more at ease as I had the experience back in November 2024 to present to the Trust Board with my mental health practitioner. So I felt confident having had the experience to present before. I'm not sure what will happen next when I pass my MVQ, as I will no longer be part of the apprenticeship scheme. Home Group that joint fund my job are unsure if they will be able to fund me remaining there. I have spoken to my mental health practitioner and she has advised me she will support me to access the employment service again if I want to. And that is the end of Colin's story. And I'm sorry that I couldn't keep my camera on at that time. Everything seems to be working a bit against me today, but I will send Colin's video as well, and you can hear in his own words. And as I'm sure you agree, it's a powerful story. Colin did come to our Trust Board, and he was very happy that you were going to hear his story today.
Thank you, Ellen. So many aspects of that story that I think are really, really important. I just want to give colleagues the opportunity, if anyone wants to make a comment or an observation or ask a question. Vicky?
I think an observation more than anything, Ellen, because it just shows, doesn't it, the continuing support and that relationship that he'd built up with the health practitioners was so important, wasn't it, in terms of his ongoing support. So it's great to hear that positive continuation of support for that individual.
Yeah, agree.
Thank you. Yes, because you know, that obviously the advocacy around the continued use of clozapine, I mean, that was really important to Colin, wasn't it? So how do you kind of get that balance right in terms of providing the care, and actually if perhaps it had exacerbated his mental health, that wouldn't have helped his recovery in terms of his cancer either. So it's kind of really making sure we balance all these things. The other thing I always feel when I hear stories from people who have been you know, gone through serious mental illness and living with it even now, is that sense of why it's important to have some hope and things to look forward to, and the apprenticeship, the value of that, the opportunities that might come from employment. You know, I think as Jade will come on to, because her paper covers some of this as well, it is so important. It's so much more than just the health. You know, the healthcare we provide is obviously incredibly important, but opportunities for employment, for good housing, all these things are absolutely critical as part of the overall picture for mental health in particular, but also for physical health. So it does bring us kind of full circle to think about all those things. But can you please, Ellen, pass on our thanks to Colin for being willing to share his
Okay.
story with us as well. And really important that we hear that and understand the sort of challenges he personally faced and how he has been supported through them and has managed them himself. So thank you. We also come back to you just to talk about the item 10, which is the Community Mental Health Services Review,
Yes.
which is quite relevant in relation to Colin's own experience, because the review that prompted that was somebody with serious mental illness sort of attacking other people, unfortunately, killing people. So shall we hand back to you, Ellen, on that one then?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so you're absolutely right. There is a read across, isn't there, from the story and his experience, Colin's experience, and this paper, and the really tragic events that happened in Nottingham in January 2024. So as board members will be aware, every area has been asked to produce a plan in common effectively to set out our response. So it was an NHSE requirement to review community mental health services against the maturity matrix and identify a plan to address any areas for development and service provision. So you've got a paper that sets out our review and our maturity assessment. There are some really detailed appendices attached to this. So hopefully people have had a chance to kind of scan through that. I think one of the things that and I'm not going to read through kind of all of the detail, obviously, but one of the things that I did just want to sort of pull out is, because as you know, I'm obviously relatively new in post as well. And I've been interested to look at some of the differences in the models we've got across the two areas, across Herefordshire and Worcestershire. So some of this is drawn out in the report, and it talks about bringing the Worcestershire model up more in line with what we've got in Herefordshire. But I think one of the caveats that I just wanted to put around that is that this work will deliver us a response to the review and ensure our services are safe. I am confident of that, but we won't be in a position to have a full assertive outreach model unless we do probably think about some investment in these services. So I wouldn't want board members to leave with assurance that we're going to deliver a full assertive outreach within existing resources. I think what we'll have to do is, as we evolve through this piece of work, we'll be able to do an assessment of what that looks like, and then that would be something we'll need to come back and consider in future prioritisation cycles and think about what we want to prioritise in that regard. But I think this is a robust response to the requirements of the review, doesn't deliver assertive outreach in full, but is a good step towards that on the journey. So I'm happy to take any questions on that, Krishni.
Thank you, Ellen. So colleagues, any questions regarding this paper and the specific focus on the community mental health services, which was the ask of the review following the CQC Section 48 review of the Valdo Callicane case? Any questions or comments? So I think, interestingly, Ellen, I think you've answered my question, because I was just going to ask about equity of provision across Herefordshire and Worcestershire, but I think you've answered that question already in your response. So that's helpful. And I think the main risk you've cited to delivery of the plan is, or that the programme has cited, is the staff capacity risk. But I mean, I guess that you'll keep that as part of kind of under review to make sure we can deliver, because the expectation is we do the development by March 27. So we've got a little bit of time, haven't we, to continually review and make sure we're on track to deliver the changes.
Yeah, that's it. And now I think, we have. So there's time, and we'll be working this through iteratively as we go through the quite comprehensive programme plan that you've seen at the back. So.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Ellen. So we note the programme of work, and obviously it's for the board to receive assurance that the programme of work is addressing the response that was needed to the Section 48 review from the CQC of Nottinghamshire Healthcare, which was the sort of learning coming from that. So on to broader mental health discussion then, which will no doubt also reference the community mental health services, but much broader picture. So over to you, Jade, for that paper, which is item 11, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good morning, Board. So from the paper presented the spotlight on mental health services, I'm going to pull out a number of key areas and then talk you through some challenges as well. So firstly, can I just say 24-25 was a really good year for mental health services and for this system in terms of its achievements. There's some real marked improvements both in the delivery and the commissioning of mental health services. And I'm going to start with children and young people. So for children and young people, we now have the highest number of children and young people ever that have been able to access a number of different services for their mental health. Not only that, but they are now able to get earlier support around emotional well-being. And we've managed to broaden the offer so that there is something for children that maybe do not respond appropriately or able to engage with talking therapies. So we've got our digital offer that is more like a game, is the best way I can describe it to you. And of course, that is much more suitable for younger children. Then we will take this forward this year. So our Milo service, which was the one I mentioned around the emotional well-being, that's got off to a flying start this year and really good feedback from children, young people and their families. And I want to give the board some assurance that Milo and the Health and Care Trust specialist mental health services, so child and adolescent mental health team, they are working together so that no child will fall in any gap between them. No child will be bounced from one service to another. This means that we've got the opportunity to do that early intervention more successfully and get to children before a crisis arises. Really exciting stuff, and well done to the two clinical teams there for that joint piece of work. Also, though, we're not going to stop there. So for 25-26, we're going to continue that growth. We have very excited to be in Wave 14 for the mental health in schools rollout. The Health and Care Trust lead on that endeavour for us, and really positive, again, feedback from school pupils and from teachers, head teachers. So really looking forward to that. Plans are well developed, I have to say, and recruitment has started. The bit that we will do later on the year is then take a look at the crisis pathway for children and young people. We recognise that we can make some improvements there, particularly about joint working and particularly at points of escalation. So I just raise that with the board as an area to note of our future intent. If I go on to my second area, and I'm going to pull out some of the work around the improvements to mental health acute inpatient care and rehabilitation. That is a local agreed priority for us. We want to eradicate out of area inpatient admissions for our population so that people have care closer to home, quite rightly, but also it makes their recovery better. Just as we do in physical health, we want to return patients quickly to their usual place of residence, get back into their usual routine. And we've already touched through Colin's story, the importance therefore of things like access to employment support, but also good housing, friendships, being part of your community. And you'll see in the paper that it talks about the individual placement and support services. We will, in line with the national ambition, grow those right up to 28-29. And we're making really good progress in getting people like Colin into that level of support. Turning back to inpatient care, if I may. So not only is that care closer to home, but then we should have and be able to see a reduction in the length of stay in those acute facilities. And we're aiming quite an ambitious target to get to the average of 35. I'll say today we have 0 out of area placements. So we are achieving the ambition, our stretched local ambition, but also that length of stay is on trajectory as well. So that joint working between the Health and Care Trust with its partners, for example, Worcestershire County Council, Herefordshire Council, in order to support people with their discharges, is starting to see some really positive early results. Also, I'll just point you in the report around there were obviously quality and safety issues identified by CQC. Can I just confirm that those issues that related to Hillcrest have all been resolved as well? So really in this space, and you'll see in the Annex 1, there's a bit of an infographic outlining our commitment around inpatient care. We've got a good programme of work, and I can give you some assurance about that. Now, my third area of success I'm going to illustrate is all of the performance metrics, really, for where they achieved at the end of 24-25, and they're ongoing into 25-26. And you'll see in the report there we've expanded the number of KPIs as we start to get into making sure that the holistic care of an individual is managed. Not just a focus on access or recovery. The targets are clearly important to us as a system, but not just because of what they represent for achieving those targets, but also what they represent for people. So we've got, again, more people now being able to access perinatal maternal mental health, really key to giving both families a good basis for their pregnancy, but also the best start in life for a baby and mum. So really good work conducted by that team led by the Health and Care Trust, good strong partnerships with our maternity systems in our acutes as well. If I turn now to an area of strength that's been actually an area of strength of this system for at least 4 years, and that's our physical health checks for people with severe and enduring mental health. It means, therefore, we have real confidence that we will complete that into 25-26. So we're going to focus on, actually, are we assured about the difference we are making for people with their physical health? So really stretching and challenging ourselves about the outcome that we're achieving. So going underneath that metrics. Again, really exciting and really well supported by primary care in achieving that. Recovery in talking therapies remain strong. So once you enter treatment, you are showing visible signs, clinical signs of your recovery. We still have some work to go, unfortunately, in the access of talking therapies. Please, can I give assurance that this is a managed target? This is a managed programme of work that we're doing, which is in line with the number of trainees we can have every year and the finances available to us. This is where I think the link to building sustainable futures comes in. So again, mental health services is looking at productivity, so getting it right first time. We're doing that in talking therapies. We're also doing that in our inpatient work as well, so that the resource that's given to these areas is as productive as it can be. Let me just turn now to the challenges, if I may. One of the challenges that seems to have haunted this system is the number of people with a dementia diagnosis being much lower than our demographics would suggest should be there. We do have a really good, thriving dementia programme board with sub-boards in both Herefordshire and Worcestershire, so that voluntary and community sector can engage in place that matters to them. Now, the Dementia Programme Board this year is prioritising raising awareness of dementia but also looking at the post-diagnostic support. Next week, we'll be launching a market engagement and we'll be entering a procurement to strengthen that post-diagnostic support. Both of those strands of work recognises that we've got much more improvement to make to dementia care, but in doing so, we're hoping we will encourage people to seek the support when they recognise they've got symptoms. And then finally, I'll just share with you that all of the work that you see in the paper is under the umbrella of the Mental Health Collaborative. And this year, as well as the oversight of the finances, again, that are detailed in the report, we will also be conducting and developing a mental health strategy, pulling all of these streams together. That strategy, of course, will align with the 10-year health plan that's just been launched, but also the reforms in the Mental Health Act that is coming later into the year. One of those reforms that I'm just going to flag with you is the 24/7 neighbourhood health. This really gives parity of esteem in mental health to physical health to the work that we've been doing around neighbourhood health. The other elements within the 10-year plan really reflect the work that we've already got outlined for the year and for the forthcoming years ahead. So we're very pleased to see that focus. Of course, we will have challenges with regard to stretching the financial resources, but as Ellen says, that's where our prioritisation comes in. We will take into account the views of our patients, our public, our families and our carers, but also our key stakeholders when we come to look at that prioritisation. So I'm going to pause there and happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jade. Very comprehensive paper and an update. So any comments or questions from colleagues around our virtual board today? Ellen, please.
Thanks, Krishni. I don't think I can miss the opportunity just to celebrate the work of my teams, particularly on the out of area placements work and the length of stay. That's been a huge achievement and it's been clinically led by John Deverprium and really engaged the consultants and putting the patient at the heart of the work. So I think that's been a really impressive piece of work. We want to keep making progress on that, obviously, but I just wanted to celebrate that and note that for the board today.
Thank you, Ellen. And it is a really important indicator, isn't it, for all sorts of reasons, but particularly in relation to, we know that patients' experience is compromised, access to family and all of that by being out of area. So it is a really important measure in many different respects. Simon, please, Simon Adams.
Click on the right icon in a minute. Sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to first of all, we acknowledge, that generally the really good improvements that have been made with the performance, but just wanted you to note that we are still, because of a recurring theme for us is parents' concern about access to CAMHS. So just to note that we are still following up on those concerns, and I haven't had an opportunity to actually meet Ellen yet. But one of those things, Ellen, when I do meet you, I'll share with you, is because we still are following that up through various other committees, and those people who chair or work on those committees or groups will know about that. But I just thought I needed to pass that on to you.
Thanks, Simon. I look forward to properly meeting you soon. Sorry, we haven't crossed paths.
We just keep seeing each other on
meetings.
Yeah, past meetings. Thank you, Krishni.
Thanks, Simon. And it is a really important area of focus, as no doubt Jade will highlight. Jade, do you want to come back in?
Yes, just want to give assurance to the board that we've heard Healthwatch. I've had the pleasure of seeing Simon and his colleagues, and I know other colleagues on the gallery also have received the information from Healthwatch, which we've taken very seriously. So we're currently conducting a quality review into our child and adolescent mental health services. The report is due imminently, and we continue to be thankful for that feedback, and we utilise that, and it's a really good example of how we will go and check out and look to make improvements off the back of it.
Thank you, Jade. Just a couple of other comments really from me, Jade, and I'll just perhaps you can respond. So I think one of the things that you probably allude to, but I just wanted to double check, because I think there are some talking therapies nowadays. There are some nice approved digital solutions for talking therapies as well. And I know, given there's some of the challenges around recruitment, which I think the paper alludes to, I wondered how much that is an option. I know it wouldn't work for everybody, and we'd have to be careful about digital exclusion, but that was just one area. The other was more around the disproportionate, we know in terms of serious mental illness, and I think there is some data in the paper around ethnic minority members of our community perhaps don't access services early enough, and I just wondered whether there's something in the how do we get different parts of our community accessing services early enough, so that actually, just as in acute physical health settings, people don't wait until they're acutely unwell before they present to services, which is always a concern, isn't it? So I just wondered if you could make a comment about those two things, Jade.
Yes, certainly. So with regard to the use of digital and digital therapies in talking therapies, that is a component, and that's there to give patients choice. But also it widens up access. So if you want to do your therapy at midnight, for example, you could use the digital offer. The clinicians are really very mindful when they triage as to whether the digital offer is suitable for all, not only around digital exclusion, but thinking about the wider person context. So, for example, that doing your therapy is at midnight, is that the right time to be doing your therapy? So really important that we keep that balance between clinical staff and then the access through into the digital. That's all very well scoped up through the talking therapies service. But we'll always look at more opportunities for those digital. And again, if I take the children example, I talked about Luminova, whereby we're using almost a game digital. So yes, you can see that the growth in that area. Moving on to your second question about, are we have assurance that all parts of our community can access mental health services? Well, this is where the work of our mental health programme board comes in, and the fabulous partnership that we've got. As I say, it's got many partners from the voluntary and from different parts of our community. This is exactly the topic they discuss. On top of that, we do have mental health practitioners in primary care, so that there is an improved link as part of our primary care offer to your mental health. And not forgetting, I'm talking very much about the services that Ellen's team supply, the Health and Care Trust, but also primary care has social prescribers, and we're finding more and more that they are becoming almost a good point of early intervention for people. The other final point I'll just flag is this is where we need to raise the profile of your mental health and what good mental health looks like. So the Mental Health Partnership are exploring that and looking at campaigns that are meaningful for the population. So not just something that adds to those that already can access, but actually really targets those communities where we've got underrepresentation.
Great. Jade, thank you very much. That's really helpful. And I think in the context that, mental health and mental well-being is a big part of our integrated care strategy, and as both our health and well-being boards and health and well-being strategies highlight the importance of good mental health and wellbeing. So in the context of all of that, really important discussion today. And thank you very much for the spotlight and the update, Jade. Really valuable to focus on this really important part of our delivery. And thank you to colleagues in the Health and Care Trust and indeed other partners who supported that. Right, well, that gets us neatly to a short break, which we've landed more or less on time, a little bit, tiny minute late, but I think you'll let me off that. So perhaps we can reconvene at 11:05 to conclude the rest of our agenda, and we'll make a quick start because we do need to conclude the meeting by 12. So do remember we are still live streaming, so you may wish to just turn your camera and your microphone off. Thanks everyone, and thanks Jade. Okay, welcome back everybody. So we will now conclude the rest of our items on the agenda. For anyone joining us now, we are on item 12, which is the system quality and delivery report. Just make sure that I've got everybody back. Okay, Mary, you look ready to go, so I shall hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, as usual, this report provides the high-level detail of the focus of our Quality and Resources and Delivery Committee in the last period. You'll see in Appendix 1 the detailed metrics and where we are with those. In future reports, you will be receiving community metrics as well, because it's largely focused on acute. So that will be a useful addition to our system. So I was going to pick out some of the crucial areas that were discussed. Urgent and emergency care. I think although we do remain still challenged, I have to say I feel it's in the strongest position we have been for quite a few years at the moment. Our ambulance handover position has improved. The ask is that all ambulances are handed over within 45 minutes. That's 100% handed over within 45 minutes. We currently are at 77%, and I particularly want to focus on Worcester Acute, who in June got 80% of their ambulances handed over within 45 minutes, which is a significant improvement. We've had to commit to the national and regional team when we will achieve 100% in 45 minutes, and we've said that will be between September and December across the two areas. So that is based on the final delivery of our plans and the maturity of our delivery of those plans. So a lot of work to be done in the next couple of months to achieve that. The key areas of focus that we need to improve now remain the EAS standard and the 12 hours in the emergency department. In Worcestershire, which you know is Tier 1, so a key area of focus, we now have a detailed programme plan to deliver discharge to assess, which you know has been an issue for some time at the end of the summer, and that should help us to unblock the ED departments to allow that improvements to be realised. And ESIS, the national team supporting Tier 1, are in with the Acute Trust at the moment, working with the clinical teams to make sure that we are taking all actions we can to see that improvement. I've discussed in the past the ED audit that we did. We did a large, extensive ED audit across the 3 sites. We've had follow-up discussions and meetings with WMAS, etc. And one of the key actions that we're taking, we're going to spend the next couple of months out with WMAS crews in their hubs across our ICS, upskilling and training the staff, the new clinical staff they've got on our pathways to support improvement as well. The region and national team tell us now we've got all the ingredients in place, we've got all the pieces of the jigsaw in place, every best practice in place to deliver improved urgent care. It's now about making it happen in practice and making it really resilient. So that will be the focus for our winter plan, which will be tested on the 2nd of September. So that's the main highlights for urgent care. Children and young people, just want to pick up on the discussion at the top of the meeting. So for Worcestershire, we have seen no improvement in our neurodivergent assessment waiting times. In fact, we've seen a further deterioration. We've had to take the decision for this year to go out to the independent sector and commission and procure alternative providers to focus on those children and families that are waiting over 104 weeks, which is over 2 years. That has been agreed, and we've got 5 providers who are waiting and willing to take those children. We won't resolve all of the issues with this. You know, the next lot of children will be that are waiting probably 18 months will still be an issue for us. But to try and resolve those very long waiting children, that's what we're doing currently. And we're continuing to work with the Health and Care Trust on a longer term model to try and resolve this problem. Again, waiting for the national decision on how this should be run in the future, because every system is in the same position. Picking up on what Simon said earlier about elective and cancer care, you can see the detail there. I won't go into too much detail, but some really pleasing improvements in productivity across both of our providers at the moment. And this is, you know, we've got some now fantastic system-wide, ICS-wide specialty forums for the specialty areas in our system that are really driving the GIRF programme, and it's started to make a difference. Nationally, we are they are re-tiering. They're re-looking at all the tiering for the whole country at the moment. So waiting to hear the outcome of that in our system. The one area of slight concern we've got at the moment is diagnostics, and this is mainly driven by a significant increase in elective and cancer referrals this year that we've seen and the rest of the country have seen as well. So the demand on diagnostics has increased. So we're trying to seek a resolution for the rest of this year to ensure it doesn't impact on our performance currently. That's the areas I wanted to escalate, but happy to myself or Kath to take any questions on the rest of the paper.
Thank you, Mary. Any comments or questions from colleagues, please, relating to what Mary has highlighted? No, I think not, Mary, but a couple of quick things from me, actually. One was just around, in the spirit of focusing on mental health, one of the aspects that I think we're now being asked to, there's always been a measure, but I think is now being reported, is number of patients waiting longer than 24 hours in emergency departments in mental health care. And that's highlighted as a new metric. I think it's something we've always monitored, isn't it? It's just that it's not been necessarily publicly reported. I just wondered if there are any resource implications or challenges around that, Mary, or are we expecting that to be you know, something we can manage and make sure, because at the moment I think the target suggests it's 0, and we've certainly had in our first report a number reported. So wondered if you can comment on that, and then I've got just a question about winter planning, but maybe deal with that first.
Fine, thank you. So mental health presentations to our EDs, we benchmark quite well against, to be honest, compared to some of our other ICSs around us. It's one of our smaller challenges. We have seen a bit of an upturn in that in the last couple of months and the length of time, particularly in Worcestershire. So interestingly, the Acute Trust have asked for a deep dive in Worcestershire to have a look at that in August, which we will do. But there is a belief it's a processing issue rather than a resource issue. But I'm happy to have any feedback at the next QID, and then you'll get it through the board.
Lovely, thank you, Mary. The only other point I just wanted to make is that I think you mentioned winter plans, and I think regional kind of review early September. Probably just worth noting really that I meant sort of documentation received through the national team that we will need to sign off a board assurance statement on the winter plan in September, I think, Hannah. So that will need to come back through our governance, but it was just to make board members aware, because I think multiple communications about that have been received. Vicky?
I think it's just to say that QID has got a lot of the agenda focused on the action plan in terms of winter planning, so that QID will have seen that beforehand, had an opportunity to discuss it, and then provide some assurance when it comes back in September.
Great, that's really helpful to know. And if there are no other comments or observations, I think just generally, Mary, always good to hear that whilst there are still challenges, we are making progress, and particularly UEC, I know, has been our sort of ongoing area where we've struggled, so just want to say thank you to all the colleagues out there who are actively working to support us with those challenges, and indeed our own staff who are working hard to support people as well. So thank you, Mary, really helpful as ever. So we then move on to the item 13, which is financial plan delivery, and over to you, Mark, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. So the paper we have to the board today is the update against the financial plan, and we're at month 2. So the position effectively is against the May actual data that we have. We are monitoring the position against the financial plan that was approved and submitted as at the end of April. And as we know, that plan did include significant deficit support funding from a national perspective, but also from a local perspective as well. So whilst it's still early in the financial year, we are off plan slightly as at month 2, so £457,000. You'll see within the report that is predominantly coming through against both Worcestershire Acute and also against the Health and Care Trust, predominantly driven by excess capacity that is still open, and we are working through plans as to how that is removed as part of the overall flow programme. You'll see within the position then a big requirement this year on efficiency delivery. So year to date, we've got a plan of 14.4 million. That equates to about 10% of the plan. So one of the things we are looking at closely is the phasing of the efficiency plan, because we don't want it to hockey stick as we go into the second half of the year and lead ourselves into a false sense of security in terms of we're doing really well, but then the ask steps up. So plan of 14.4 million, delivery is 14.3 million. So we're short by about 100,000. When you look at the position in a bit more detail, Y value are actually ahead of plan, so 400,000 ahead of plan, and that is offsetting an under delivery that we've seen from an early perspective against the Worcestershire Acute programme. I just want to focus a little bit on efficiency because it is a big critical risk, as I would describe it this year from a finance perspective. And you'll see particularly on page 3 of the report that at month 2, when you look at the development of plans and risk rating of the plans, there's about £40 million worth of efficiency that's currently an opportunity or unidentified at the month 2 position. And of that, we've got 51 million then still rated as high risk. So the pace around efficiency is really being pushed with all partners, and they're having conversations with their boards, with the financial recovery boards, and out there with directorates and divisions, and really looking at 2 things. How do we get more identification of those efficiency plans? Because that's key. But then also, how do we de-risk those plans? So where it's high risk, what do we need to put in place to have more assurance to bring that risk down? So huge amounts of work ongoing there at the moment, and we're really pushing, as I say, to see plans delivered, but also to see the risk rating adequately moving in the right direction. Another big part of the requirements for 25-26 are around bank and agency expenditure. And as you know, we had a reduced, a significant step change, I suppose is the way I describe it, around agency expenditure that we needed to implement this financial year. You'll see at month 2 from an agency perspective, we've made some really good inroads early on in the year, and our agency spend is ahead of plan by 1.2 million. That is offset slightly by bank expenditure, which is slightly above plan, but overall there is a positive variance. We are scrutinising that in a lot of detail, making sure, 1, it's not just a swap out of agency to bank. Where bank is going in, it's appropriately authorised. And again, from an agency perspective, because that is a big part of the efficiency plans, what assurance can we take from trusts and the work they're doing to really see that swap out coming through? So again, you'll see within the report, and there's some appendices and a little bit more information about the movement we're seeing around bank. Within the report then, as usual, we've included lots of information on each of the partner organisations and on the ICB plans as to where we're at. And again, it's very early, but one area I did want to pull out from an ICB perspective is around contracting. As you know, we're going back into more of a contracting world for 25-26 with a commissioning aspect, and there's a real push at the moment we're having internally around a 3-stage process, predominantly because elective recovery funds, as we talked about, was stepped down a little bit in 25-26 allocations. So for this system, it was about £10 million less than the run rate we were looking at in 24-25. I think it's fair to say we're getting a lot of pushback from out-of-county and independent sectors providers who are looking for a higher activity baseline than we can afford to give them. But as part of the approach we're going through, we're really looking at where do we need our referral to treatment times to be? what is our waiting list equity across all of our providers, not just in system but out of system as well, and then where do we really need to strategically commission some more activity in certain specialties to really tackle some of those long waiters and really keep this waiting list reduction moving in the right direction, as Simon referenced within his report earlier. I think I'd probably just finish by saying, whilst we are only at month 2, we do have some big financial risks, as I've already referenced, particularly around efficiency and ensuring that plans are in place, robust, and we're delivering. There's a key focus across the system still and through the ICS Finance Committee on how we de-risk these plans and how we remove what effectively is the largest driver of that risk, which is the efficiency ask. So the report does cover capital, very early days as well from a capital perspective, but again, just to keep the board sighted on where we are around those capital plans. But Chair, I'll stop there and I hope to take any questions or comments on the paper.
Thank you very much, Mark. Any questions or comments? Mark, I mean, obviously noted, I think you quoted a figure of 38 million in the paper around the efficiency risk. So that clearly is significant. And that's just, I guess, as of now, that's just a moment in time, isn't it? And we should note that there's a kind of cash implication in that, isn't there? Because there's something about our performance, ongoing performance, and the provision of funding from NHSE to maintain our cash positions. I think I've understood that correctly. So it's not just, you know, the sort of in-year delivery and progress of in-year deliveries is actually really important, isn't it, to maintain?
Absolutely, Chair. Do you want me to just come in on the cash regime, which has changed in 25-26? So we are expecting to see that more in the business rules from NHS England. But the change to the cash regime relates to the deficit support allocation, which this system is a recipient of £73.2 million. And what NHS England have now done is, rather than put it in the complete annual allocation, it's released quarterly to systems based on financial performance and their assurances linked to risk and actions being taken. So for this system, it equates to about £18 million a quarter. Quarter 1 and quarter 2 has been approved by NHS England. So from a cash perspective, we've got some certainty there. We are remaining in constant conversation and dialogue with NHS England about further actions we're taking. They're more engaged in our meetings now with all of the providers on a monthly basis, looking at the actions and assurances that have been taken to be assured that we're still on plan, we're managing our risk, and that's how the cash then gets released. If cash is withheld, it will create cash problems, and there is a enhanced regime now that trusts have to go through from a board perspective with NHS England before any additional cash will be released. So it's an enhanced regime around cash, Chair, yes.
Yeah. No, thank you for reminding us of that, Mark. It's, I think, just important to note that underperformance potentially poses other risks for us, which are so kind of additional elements to note around that. And I think you mentioned the ICS Finance Committee. I'm conscious Rachel, obviously as chair of that, isn't here, but this is an ongoing focus, as you rightly said, in that committee, and I think we do have NHS England representation as part of that committee as well, don't we? So in addition to the recovery boards that are running in the individual organisations, that the focus, the balance of focus in the finance committee needs to be between sort of the medium-term plan, but also in-year delivery. So yeah, more a comment than a question mark, but just wanted to reinforce those points. Anything else, Mark, you want to pick up before we close?
Nothing specific from me at this stage, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. So thank you for the update on our performance. Obviously, we note the financial position reported at month 2 and note the risks, which was, I think, particularly in relation to efficiency, but also obviously ongoing focus on agency and workforce as well. And the system's capital position is also noted. So thank you very much. We then move on to our governance and assurance section. So Hannah, we have our committee escalation and assurance report. So opportunity for Hannah or the committee chairs to comment on any specific things that you want to bring to our attention. There's probably a lot of things we've already discussed through our board meeting, but if there's anything that colleagues want to highlight, please do come in. We're okay at the moment for time, but I'll open it up first of all to Hannah in case she has anything she particularly wants to draw to our attention.
Thank you, Krishna. No, there isn't really anything in particular. It is only anything that the chairs would like to highlight.
Any comments from committee chairs then in relation to anything in your committee reports? Sarah, please.
I don't want to prolong things, obviously, Krishni, but I think it may just be worth people casting their eye down the list of some of the things that the Strategic Commissioning Committee did approve. Whilst obviously noting Mark's report and our financial position, there are some, I think, quite positive things that have been commissioned there. Just and some come with different national funding streams as well. But for example, the lung cancer screening programme. And probably to draw people's attention to our last meeting where we approved primary care implementation of weight management medication going forward. So again, if any members of the public are listening, I'd advise keeping an eye on the ICB website for details of that. But I think that is a really positive way to move things forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. I think it's always worth noting those developments and where, you know, whilst we recognise that there are challenges, we're also trying to invest in the right places to improve the care we provide, and that's always an important balance. So, yeah, particularly note the updates in the Strategic Commissioning Committee areas of advice that have been highlighted. Okay, so that report is just there for us to note and really gain assurance in relation to the work of our committees that obviously support the board in its work and its gaining, particularly in terms of gaining assurance. So thank you very much to colleagues, non-executive colleagues who chair the committees, and indeed Hannah's team, who always provide excellent support in relation to the governance arrangements of the ICB. Okay, we then move on. We do have some other items today. We have terms of reference for approval and scheme of reservation and delegation. So Hannah, back to you on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Krishni. So this report is for approval of both the committee terms of reference and the refreshed scheme of reservation and delegation. So you will hopefully remember that back in March, we have brought a committee effectiveness review outcome here, just to kind of share with you some of the sort of changes that we would be proposing in terms of reference. So these have now translated into formalised, updated terms of reference. They largely relate to membership changes, changes to attendees, some slightly more significant changes in terms of the remit of the Strategic Commissioning Committee, with that acquiring the responsibility for approving mental health proposals and recommendations, which previously sat with the Joint Mental Health Committee. And also, please note, we have recently formed a new committee, which is the Coventry and Warwickshire and Herefordshire and Worcestershire Joint Transition Committee, that has now met a couple of times and will continue to meet during the period of transition. The scheme of reservation delegation then have been amended to reflect largely the changes to terms of reference and some additional changes related to subcommittees, in particular primary care delegated commissioning committee, subcommittee, and the associate governance that goes with that. So today I'm just asking you to approve those suites of documents, please, for us.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. So any questions relating to those items, or colleagues happy to approve the two things, really, the suite of committee terms of reference and the updated scheme of reservation and delegation reflecting some changes? Content to approve. Thank you. Okay. So that's item 15, and then Hannah, back to you on the board assurance framework, please.
Yes, thank you. So this is the second report in this financial year in terms of the board assurance framework and some of the slightly updated format, which hopefully by now you recognise. So we are pleased to report some positive assurance movements since the last report, and those are detailed on pages 3 and 4 of the report. So specifically, priority 3C that relates to building a sustainable future. So we are proposing to increase assurance from partial from limited to partial, and priority 4D, which relates to the development and implementation work and health strategy to demonstrate the NHS role in supporting improved social and economic impact. So we are proposing to increase that assurance from limited to partial as well, and the rationale for that is provided within the report. We then also have got some sort of sub-priorities changes as well. So those are the individual components that make up the assurance for the overarching priorities. So again, some positive movements of assurance that relate to quality and performance of mental health, and that aligns with the report that Jade has presented earlier. And also one related to effective utilisation of medicines and pharmacy. So then in terms of the key sort of areas of risk, again, I think most of them have been discussed today, and they relate to children and young people, management of the urgent care system. We continue to have a high risk related to C. diff, and of course also, which probably hasn't quite come through the meeting today, but of course we have, I mean, Krishna mentioned in the meeting earlier our excellent staff satisfaction results that we have achieved this year, and we are unlikely to, unfortunately, maintain those excellent results given everything else that's going on. But of course we will do our best to be in the best position we possibly can. So that's probably all I would raise. I'm happy to take any questions, and this report is for assurance.
Thank you, Hannah. Any questions or comments on the BAF update, Board Assurance Framework update? It's always very comprehensive and easy to follow, Hannah, so thank you. I think it's very clear, but very happy to take any comments or questions if people would like to highlight anything. Okay, if not, then I think we are happy to receive and gain that assurance, Hannah, on that paper. And I think that concludes our business for today, a little bit earlier than we planned for, but no bad thing, because we do have a 12 o'clock meeting for our AGM to present our annual accounts. So colleagues can have a short break before that. I would appreciate everybody coming back into that meeting, because it's really important for us to be, I imagine, for us to be corporate for that meeting, Hannah. So I'd really appreciate everyone coming back for 12 o'clock to join that link. Obviously, it is a public meeting, so we need to maintain or observe the planned time for starting that meeting. So thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions today. Really good spotlight on mental health, which I think was really helpful, and lots of useful updates on progress as well. So thank you to everyone for their work on papers and updates, and I will close the meeting. Thanks very much.